This morning. I'm excited to talk about some of the things we're going to talk about today. We have been chewing on some different things. And Kimberly, I just want you to know, like, we're not predictively just living off of our one-on-one meetings or the meetings we're doing with Rainmaker, but it's going to sound like that a little bit today as we look at what we're checking out as far as topics go. But we're going to talk about when it comes to shifting things. Sorry, I'm pulling up my notes. When it comes to shifting things in your business, big shifts operating from an SOP, especially when it comes to things with your people. And so today we're going to talk about big shifts like moving from 1099s to W-2 wage earners, and moving people from that contractor seat to a actual employee in the company. But we're also going to talk about big shifts because there's some people that might not be in that space, but could really benefit from hearing just how are we thinking about procedure? Like, how are we thinking about the way we roll things out? Are we just shooting from the hip? Because there's a lot of danger in that. A lot of visionaries kind of shoot from the hip. You know what I mean? Like, they've got a big idea, they've got a new thing they want to roll out. They're super excited about it. Usually all of them feel like this is the best idea they've ever had, like that. Then they roll up on us every time with that in the pitch. Like, oh my gosh, you guys would not believe I've got the best idea. And like, they're so stoked on it. But then a lot of times for operations-based people, it's like a straight handoff, right? Like, their idea becomes our baby. So I think that it's important for us to have good go-to moves when it comes to systems and operations, and especially when it comes to handling people, right? Because now we're not just talking about something we're slinging. We're talking about people that we want to retain to be with us for a long time. More and more I hear the job market's out there. It's a dog-eat-dog world for job market right now. Like, people are being poached out from underneath other people, a lot of times just by better pay or better benefits or better opportunities. And I think it's really important for us to realize in retaining our people, it's the way that we treat them, right? Like, for a lot of our folks, there are obviously money talks, but for a lot of our folks, they just want to be happy doing what they do. You know what I mean? They just want to know when they show up, they know exactly what's laid out in front of them, and they know by the end of the day, they can end fulfilled. They don't like rolling into a train wreck every single day. They don't like running into things being jerked around on them all over the place where they don't even know what to expect. And when it comes to org chart restructure, when it comes to shifting in roles, that's like some sacred, sensitive ground, because now you're talking about their bread and butter and their daily responsibilities and all those different things. And if we're always shifting that on people, it can lead to some, at minimum, discontent, right? So at minimum, like instability, unsurety, a lack of confidence in, are they doing their job well? Because if we keep changing up their titles, we keep changing up their job description, we keep changing up what we expect out of them, it's really hard to hit a moving target. And worst case scenario, resentment. People can begin to resent it, and it turns into an axe they're grinding. And then, like, every time you shift, it becomes a sharper edge of the axe. And every time and then at some point, depending on their personality, either they have an explosive blow up and they exit, or they just exit quietly, and hold on to those resentments as they move on. Or worse even yet, they begin to leach some of their poison into your people because of something that really you did as the visionary from the top, or because we as operations-based people at the top organizations aren't thinking through what's the best employee journey. We talk a lot about customer journey when it comes to, hey, we onboard a new client, how can we escalate them up the product ladder? How can we continue to retain them for longer, deeper engagement with us? And a lot of times we can treat our customers really well, but then forget it's the people, right? It's our people. The more customers you take on, it's a ratio, so as you grow your communities, you need more people to be able to support the bandwidth of the new people you're bringing on. And then what's the employee journey? Like, how are we considering what their escalation is? Are we giving them somewhere? Thank you, Kimberly, for taking notes for Daryl. I can't wait to tell him that. That's the best thing I've seen all day. But essentially, like, how are we thinking about them? And there's no way around. If you've already invested time and money into people, the best thing you can be thinking about doing is ascending them in your ladder of operations, because they're the best trained. They're going to get it the most. I was at a mastermind this past week with Steve Harward from Prime, who's one of our clients. We are at War Room, which is, a lot of guys that paid a lot of money to be in the room with other smart people. And the CEO of Kajabi got up. I think it actually was the COO of Kajabi. And he talked about growing this platform from, grassroots to this multi-million-dollar organization. But he said that the bigger and bigger you get, you start hiring smarter and smarter people. Usually big guns from other companies. And if you get too many of those in your organization, they actually begin to change your culture, And so I think that really realizing growing people up from within is great. There are going to be times you need to go external to bring people in, but how can we keep people happy, grow them in their skill set, give them a good ascension, give them a good customer journey, or give them a good employee journey, and hopefully raise up some of our grassroots people as high as we can get them in the organization. And then obviously they're going to be specialists we need to bring in from the outside. That's great, but they're not the majority, they're the minority. And therefore the majority is able to influence the minority, and their brilliance they bring to the table is influenced by all of our years of investment in culture. Ben Clatterbuck, what do you think about that? I felt like I just told the story of Ben Clatterbuck's life. I felt like the hero journey of Ben Clatterbuck was just disclosed. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, culture, I mean, is a huge thing. That plays as much in your employees' happiness with your company as just about anything else. If you've got a dry, stale, lame duck culture, like the only thing keeping your employees there is pay. Right. And all it takes is another company to go, I'll give you an extra $5 an hour, and they're gone. But if you have a great culture, that rewards employees and they feel rewarded and they feel fulfilled, like you said, even if it's tough work, like an extra $1 or $2 an hour, that employee's going to go, well, I mean, I don't really know much about your company. I know this company. I know they take care of me. I know they appreciate me. I know where I'm going in it. Just that bit of culture can keep some of your top players in your company around for a long time, even as other companies try to poach them out. Like especially, I talk a lot about like employees these days, especially if you're hiring younger employees, that fulfillment, that culture, at least for these younger generation of workers, weighs a lot more than even a dollar bill. So, if you're talking about companies trying to poach your employees and say, hey, I'll pay you an extra $3-4, whatever may be an hour, the culture of your company is actually going to hold this younger generation of workers a lot more than that dollar an hour would. So culture is huge. And especially if you, like you said, if you can grow your employees or your team from the ground up, they're just going to carry that culture, because it's a lot easy to do that when you're a small company, because as a visionary, they're in there with their hands all the time. As you get to those large companies, it's hard to get even FaceTime with a visionary. But if you could hold on to those key players who've been with you from the beginning and ascend them up that employee journey, they then take that with them and they're able to spread your culture to new employees as you bring them in. It's a win-win all around.
Yeah. I think too, Ben, you can speak to a little bit about just feeling jerked around with like responsibilities and roles. Yep. Like, what am I doing today versus tomorrow? And like, what does pay look like? And what does my ascension look like? Do you want to talk about that just for a quick minute?
Yeah. I mean, with the last company I was with, we started, zero, nothing, with the owner and the visionary, and we grew and we learned as we went. A lot of that learning process was figuring out that, as you change things on the fly, people aren't very happy about it, especially for us, we were brick and mortar. So it was a little bit more structured in that you need a manager at a location and you need X amount of employees at that location. But I mean, there were times where we would go, hey, I know you've been managing this location, we're going to send you over here. People go, what? Now I have to figure out my whole life again. I have to go through learning all these new employees again. And that jerking process, even at just the lower levels of management, really messes with people's lives. And you get up into the upper management where you're like, I'm this position. Okay, wait, I just figured out what that position means, because we don't have any of that. I'm learning what the position is, but now I'm doing this position. Now I have to learn what that is too. Like, what do you want me to do? It causes a lot of stress and a lot of, like you said, it can cause a lot of resentment, and it causes you to a feeling of like, do you really know what you're doing with this company? Because it seems like I'm going here, there, and everywhere. So I don't know if I have confidence in your ability to run this company.
Yeah, no, it's good. And I think too, like just the thought of, you're also creating pain points for everybody above that person, right? So as you make shifts, and shift managers and shift people managing managers, like that all has implications on happiness, right? Like,
yep.
If unhappy people come within my new pool, right, because some guy at the top has made a decision to make the shift, well, then those unhappy people become people I have to manage. And then it's like, you just handed me like a sandwich. I'm saying? Like, you just gave me something like you just gave me something that I do not want to take a bite of, because that's miserable. And so I think we're going to talk about SOPs and working things from an SOP. But I think that there's a lot to be said for keeping your people happy. I know, Savannah, even some of our clients, like I feel like you're boots on the ground. A lot of times you're consulting with managers and managers of people, and dealing with managers of people who are confused about what their roles are and what they're supposed to be doing, or and even worse, they get to their eval and then they're, or maybe not even evaluated, they're just told they're not doing a good job. But it's like, but nobody told me, nobody gave me. And then it can be whipped back around. I'm like, you should know better, you should be able to flesh this out. But they haven't been trained, they haven't been given the tools. Do you want to speak to that for a minute?
Yeah. So just kind of talking about importance of employee culture, of company culture, making sure that everyone's on the same page. If you're not all working on the same value ladder, on the same trajectory, it's really easy to accidentally hurt feelings. Especially like, even if you think you're offering constructive criticism, if the whole company isn't on the same page of what those parameters and what those expectations are, it's so hard. And then a manager is just doing what they think that they're supposed to be doing, but an employee is doing what they think that they're just supposed to be doing.
Right.
It makes miscommunication just it makes miscommunication inevitable, and then everyone's upset. So I have several friends that talking about the value of the dollar. If you just keep trying to throw more money at a person to try and do the band-aid, all you're doing is kind of feeding their resume, and it gives them the ability to be like, yeah, I'm this high tier of a person, and let me take that somewhere else.
Yep.
And yeah, it's an employee's market out there right now. Like, people can
For
really
sure.
take skills anywhere. So it's so important that people feel listened to and valued, and that they fully understand what you expect of them.
I think sometimes it can get overwhelming thinking about that. Like a lot of times businesses are just chugging so hard, especially a lot of our clientele base, like they're newer, small to medium growth, like, but they're really experiencing a spike. And so they're just treading water. Like to think about like any of the things we're talking about seems so overwhelming. But that's why I do really like tools within the EOS toolbox. EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System by Gino Wickman from the book Traction. Like there's a whole EOS toolbox that's completely free. If you go to EOS online, like you can download the toolbox. But we've advocated for a lot of the tools over time, but simple things like delegate and elevate tool, or 555. If you go back even in Ops Experts Club, back at the beginning of People, I think 1.0, we talked about some of those tools and showed you some of them. But whenever we talk about a shift like this, I think an easy way to include people is by pushing them through a delegate and elevate and doing a 555 with them. Like that takes so little time. Like people are like, I don't know how to get people's opinions. I don't know how to hear some feedback back. Some of the easiest ways is push them through a delegate and elevate, push them through a 555. If they haven't done the gap analyzer yet, I think that was one of the first tools we gave you here at Ops Experts, like push them through a gap analyzer. Let's see what they say their time's doing. I always tell people the gap analyzer is great because it gets people in the context of how are they using their time, and then it becomes a conversation about how time is being used. And then from the gap analyzer, reeling them into a delegate and elevate. Which one of those duties do you want to keep? Do you not want to keep? Do you feel like should be part of your role? Is this part of your role? Look at their current job description, and then have a 555 evaluation that's just a real quick conversational based evaluation of, hey, what's working, what's not working? How are you lining up with our culture? What are some of your development goals? We just turned the corner on quarter 2. We're in the first month of quarter 2. And so at the Collab Team, we're doing all of our quarter 1 evals right now. So I feel like my schedule is stocked with 555s over the next 2 weeks. But I think, and even for the Collab Team, once a year, we do an annual review using our toolbox where, hey, here are all the tools that we're using. Have you developed more in your skills? And should we be looking at a raise based upon your experience, your expertise, and your excellence? Those are our 3 things. Like, how long have you been using this tool? At what level do you feel like you're at in this tool? Are you basic? Are you advanced? Are you, a higher level? Or how many years have you been doing it? So all those things are multipliers within our toolbox. And then excellence is something that I can weigh in on. Okay, so you've been doing it this many years. Okay, so you feel like you're at this expertise level within this tool. But how are you showing up from an excellence perspective? Because you can have people that have been doing it for a long time that really know their stuff that suck. Like they're just not good. They don't pull weight well. They don't work with team well. They're not turning out good product for the customer. And at that point, great. So you have expertise and you have, experience. But if your excellence doesn't weigh out, then that's a good spot to say, hey, this isn't I can't continue to promote you with, look at what your wage could be according to our multiplying tool. But your excellence, that's like the veto card of, yeah, but if your excellence sucks, it's going to actually bang down what your potential earnings could be. And just giving them some kind of gauge of, am I doing my job well? How am I showing up? Am I getting better and better at what my skill set is? And I feel like for us operations-based people, we're the glue that holds it together, right? The visionary is going to give us the salvo from the front, right? He's going to be the one that gives us the visionary speech. He's going to be the one that, yeah, and without a strong visionary, like, businesses become very dry, like Ben said, just crusty, bureaucratic systems. If they're all run by operations people like us, like that, we're probably not going to get them very far. You know what I mean? But the visionary plus the integrator, you know, in the US model, where we come in with the operations-based glue that holds together the visionaries' rocket fuel. Like, I think that's what takes us to next levels. Kimberly, do you have any thoughts? You're always super smart. You always have cool things to say. You can change diapers, you can drive tractors, you can keep kids out of the way of buildings coming down. Tell me, do you have anything brilliant to add?
I did not drive a tractor today. However,
But do you know how to drive a tractor?
I feel confident that I can figure it out.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew it. What can Kimberly not do? That's the question. Okay,
I was like this close to asking, like, can I please drive that dump truck?
Yeah.
Like, just really, I just want to know that I can do it. I love hard things, obviously. So yeah, this is something that I feel like I had this mama bear instinct to culture in our company, and I didn't know it was there. I didn't even know it was there until it started being challenged a little bit, and I was like, "Ooh, I retained that down a little bit." Right. But I feel like, and that's one reason why I have like such a passion for women in business, because I think we can bring something to the table. No offense, guys, but I think we do have like some gifting that we can bring that just wouldn't be there otherwise. And as far as like you described, the 555s, having this drawn out on paper system of how and when we're going to promote, and areas that we can grow in, and just having like a ledger for that and a plan for it that someone can clearly look at, and like they're going to see more growth as a person, and your company is going to see more growth as a company, because as each individual grows, the company grows, and it's a beautiful thing. And when there's a lack of that, when we're all kind of like just poking around trying to figure stuff out, it leads to burnout really quickly. And some of your best people who are pulling so much weight, they're working in excellence, they're developing skill sets faster than you can dish them out, they burn out so quickly because they're being whipped around too much. And so yeah, these systems, it's kind of hard when you're looking at like, how much is it going to cost for me to hire people to do this? And like the person who does it, I can't give them a whole bunch of other rocks because they got to like focus on this. And so it kind of feels like, is this even worth our time? But then when you look at the grander picture and like, we want to scale the business and this is where we want to go as a company, we do so well taking care of our customers. But the true merit of a company is how well we take care of those who are under our umbrella.
Yeah. And I think sometimes it's easy to take people for granted. You know what I mean? Like a lot of times we're starting with our friends and our family and our loved ones. You know what I mean? Like that's usually the people that we're gathering fastest and first. You know, our greatest raving fans a lot of times are people that have just been traveling with us, you know? So it's very easy to take them for granted. Oh no, they've always been with me. Oh no, they'll always, no, they're fine with that. No, they're okay with that, you know? And then we continue to stack on them because we have proximity, you know, and we feel like we have enough relational equity that we can call on it. But I will say to some extent that's true, but in the end, at some point, if you've hired them and they're working for your company, this is still their job, and they're going to want something beyond just the familial. You know what I mean? They're going to want something just beyond, because otherwise they could have stayed your friend. You know, they'll probably always be your family. You know what I mean? Like they could have stayed in those kind of relationships, or they're, you know, a raving fan that was one of your early adopters, where they really loved your stuff, and so they were one of your first ones in, and like they want to progress with you and they want to feel good about the way they're growing with you in the company. So I think we're going to talk about all that. We're going to look at SOP right now, but some of that's in compensation. Some of that's in thinking about, you know, how we're moving people up. Yep. Leadership training. Super good, Kimberly, of just thinking about places we can put people. And, you know, the organization that Ben came out of, that I'm not going to say I poached, but I'm saying that when Ben left, I was ready to receive him. Ben and I were advocating there towards the end for when it comes to leadership training and that kind of stuff, empowering even the leaders in your organization to go find trainings that interest them and give them a budget. Hey, like Jordan, if HR is what makes you fun, just come alive, why don't you go find some experiences that you can go partake in? If that's something online that you can partake in, if that's an in-person thing that you can go partake in, where you can be around other people, hear new ideas that, you know, a lot of times the visionary, if you're not careful, can start getting frustrated if you start asking for some of these things, because it can begin to pick at areas that he's insecure about not being good at. He's probably not good at these things. That's why it's not developed. You know what I mean? He's probably developed out the things, or she's developed out the things that she's good at. Like, and she can't be like the epicenter of all knowledge, you know what I mean? So when it comes to HR, like that, they're probably not going to be awesome at it, you know? So where could you as the HR person go and get some training and bring back the gems, the gold, the goods that you've learned someplace else and plug them into your business? And then you're making the business all the more valuable. That's a good investment. You know what I mean? How can I invest in passions that people on my team already have and ways that they want to grow in their skill set, simply by saying, hey, go find us some options, go find us some things that we can look at. And then, yeah, here's your budget. I'll give you up to this much to get training each year. And then that takes it off of me as the visionary, and it puts it squarely on the person that's going to benefit from it most and bring benefit back to the company. So I think all of those things are really good. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to talk through SOP real quick. Look at these beautiful faces. Kimberly. Okay, so here, let's move to this one. So obviously, you're going to see us operate from Asana a lot. You know, that's typically how we draw out SOPs. So this is just an SOP that I kind of put together for this call, but it's things we've seen work for other clients from a 1099 to a W-2 employee shift. Now, I would say this, there's also the shift, you know, as we talk about these things, maybe you're not thinking about moving contractors to an employee, and that's fine. That's not what this whole call is about. This is more about developing team, like essentially evolving your org chart structure, you know, and whether that's 1099 to employees, or that's just thinking through like moving people, developing people on your team with the delegate, elevate, you know, job description, evals, all those different things. That it doesn't necessarily have to be a contractor's W-2 for this to work. It's more like a shift in your mindset. Like how, if you anticipate a big shift coming, be it, you know, contractors, employees, or moving a bunch of people around on your org chart, what are the steps you should be thinking through so that you don't miss things? I think it's really good. And SOP is a lot of times it's a checklist you're going through with resources tucked into them. So we're just going to go through this simple wireframe of an SOP from Asana put together. So shift from 1099 to W-2 employees. We've done this for a couple of different companies that we've worked with. And this is just kind of from experience what I would recommend. I would always start with talking to professionals, like talk to your CPA, like talk to a labor attorney. Get some best solution for your states, because we talked about it yesterday a little bit in prep for the call. The state of California is a much different animal than state of Texas. You know what I mean, like state of California has some really like considerable things that you need to be looking at, you know, that are different than other states, only because there's such a highly regulated, employee strong state, you know, whereas other states are more, you know, employer strong, you know, and state of Montana, state of Wyoming, they're going to look out for the business more than necessarily the employee. So I think talking to a professional in your state that's familiar with what's required, there are a lot of requirements when you start using contractors like employees, and you need to be careful of that. You know, are you making them work an hourly structure? You know, do they have to answer to you for all the jobs that they do? Are they receiving some sort of management? Like the IRS is a little bit gray on how they line it out, and the state that you're in is probably has their own set that they stack on top of the Fed for what they're going to require from you. But I would say look into labor laws, especially around 1099 usage and how they justify usage for 1099. So my loose framework I would give you is, if you're using somebody as a 1099, they probably should have other clients. They probably should have other things. They probably should be working within the framework of an LLC themselves. You know, like set yourself up for some success on making sure that you're careful, because the more and more you pay them and the more and more you treat them like an employee, if the IRS or if your state determines that you should have been treating them like an employee, they're going to go backwards based not just like, oh, you should be using them like that today. They're going to say, well, how long have they been in this capacity? And then they'll chase you backward with taxes too. Because when it comes to Uncle Sam, that's all he's really concerned about, right? It's not that his great love for people, it's that they want some tax off of the dollars we're paying those people. And as 1099s, we're requiring the 1099 to document what taxes are going to the Fed, that are going to the state. And Uncle Sam doesn't like that. Uncle Sam wants to have a little bit more fingers in the pie. So especially as you get bigger and bigger, very, very important. What does my state require? And how am I allowed to use 1099s versus W-2? We had a client who was using 1099s too long, and it was in a sales capacity. And so he felt like they're just 1099 salesmen. That's all they are. They're just selling for me. They sell for other people. But when the IRS actually looked at it, they said, no, they are salespeople and you're using them like an employee. Therefore, you need to go back and pay back taxes for all the years you've been using them as employees. And it was a hefty bill. And so it's something to be considering, something to be working through. So I would say always start there with talk to professionals. I would say once you've determined how you can use people, the next question is, how should we use people, right? Like, this is how can we, this is how should we. So this is, let's review the org chart and think through the implications of a switch. So it's very easy to look at org charts and to move people around, but think through the implications. Think through what's the consequence going to be of escalating this person over other people. Like, do I need to consider long-term people that have been with us for some years? Do I need to consider hurt feelings? Do I need to consider having conversations? And I'm not saying you should run your company based upon hurt feelings, but I am saying you probably should have those conversations before you escalate people, because I think that you want to get in front of the pain before the pain is coming at you. And a lot of times you're gonna be like, no, they're big. They're a big boy, they're a big girl. They'll sort it out. But yeah, maybe, or maybe they'll just bury it and resent you for it, and then it'll be collateral damage downstream. It's so much better just to have open communication and conversation. Like, let's just have a conversation about this. Hey, Sally, I just want you to know I am going to consider escalating Susie over you in this position. That's not a statement towards you, but I do feel like here are my reasons. Let's have a conversation about it. I think that if people have been with you a long time, it's important to have those conversations before they turn into pain points.
Well, and it would be a conversation about that person could use more training, more leadership training, more like we talked about, investing into different trainings. And so if you have the conversation with the person, it's not a no, you're not suited for this position. It's a not right now. And then something could be created for them later so that they're not just left in the dust.
And my hope would be like, and Ben, I'm going to pick on you here for a minute because I pick on Savannah all the time. So you're going to get it this time. If you're doing 555s, Ben Clatterbuck, we just did Ben's yesterday. If you're doing 555s, like, this should be the gauge of like how your people are doing, right? Like these plus and minuses, like how are they living up to your culture? If you've got a bunch of minuses on there and it's starting to show red in your columns, that's a really good conversation piece during a 555. So you're not catching somebody off guard on why they're not being promoted or why they're not growing. Like, if you've been having consistent conversations about how they're showing up with your core values, what's working, not working, I think that hopefully those conversation pieces are already being had, so they're not surprised when you're choosing not to promote them or to promote somebody else, or when you can show them a solid org chart and they can understand, oh, this is how people are moving, these are how people are escalating, and it can generate conversation about, well, if I want to move up too, what do you need to see from me? But in all honesty, I don't want to promote people that don't have some initiative. Like, if I'm not seeing them put out initiative, I'm probably not going to promote them. I'm not going to fire them. I'm not going to get rid of them over it, but I'm not going to keep escalating them in the company because I feel like that's not serving me well. It's not serving them well. If they're barely showing up for what they're doing now, why would I give them more? And if they're not showing me they want to ascend, why would I push them into an ascension situation? Like, that's just not me serving them well.
And ideally on those 555s, when you're talking about developmental goals, these are things that you would be talking about on a quarterly basis of, do you want to ascend? Where do you want to go? I mean, some people in my last line of work, we had plenty of people who were like, no, I don't want to be a manager.
Yeah,
I'm perfectly happy where I'm at. And we've promoted people in the past who didn't want to be promoted. They thought, well, I guess this is just what I have to do because you asked me to do it. And they were horrible management.
Yep.
And then we had to go back in and demote them. And they're like, thank you, God, I hated being a manager.
Yes.
So if you're having these conversations, at least quarterly, it shouldn't come as a surprise if you do bump somebody else over another person, because you're having conversations with them going, hey, I want to get here, but you and I both realize I'm not there yet. So we're working on it. Ideally, they're ready by the time you're ready to add a new position. And if they're not, it's a simple conversation. Like you said, like, look, not like Savannah said, not right now, but in the future, yes.
I think too, I mean, your culture at that point is going to also be very, very important. If you do have to sometimes promote or demote people back down, you know, and I think that for better or for worse, the company that Ben came out of, I think that they did have some really strong culture in that, even that they retained a lot of people that they demoted. Like a lot of people, you demote them and they're like, oh, peace out, sucker. You know, like I'm out of here. But I feel like the culture was so strong that people didn't want to leave the family. I mean, they wanted to stay as part of it. So, you know, demote them as manager, put them at a different store, and they begin to thrive back in their gifts again. But I do think that sometimes we ascended people too quick in that other company, and therefore they got into a position that they didn't really know what they were going to expect it of, and then they sucked at it because they weren't very good, because they probably just weren't wired for it. And then when you put them back into something they were so badass at before, they begin to excel again. So a lot of it is just like determining where are people at in their own personal journey. Sometimes people have personal things going on. You know, I was mentoring somebody recently and they were talking about, what do you think my next thing should be? And I said, I would strongly encourage you to consider the season of life you're in. You have a lot of young kids, like you only get them young once. So I would say, like, make sure that you're not losing traction for the things that are most important, trying to ascend something. I mean, like you've got the rest of your life to make money. You've got the rest of your life to make investments. You've got the rest of your life to grow your skill set. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that as parents, but make sure you're not neglecting your kids over it. And make sure you're not missing your opportunity to invest in them over it, because that's going to be something that sticks with you a lot longer probably than this job promotion where you got ascended to a manager and maybe it put too much stress on you in the season that you're in, or you start taking on all these side hustles at a time that it's probably better that you show up at the soccer games, you know what I mean? Or that you maybe think about coaching your kids t-ball, you know, or something where like continue, have professional and personal goals and make sure that they balance out. Because otherwise, if you get too top heavy one or the other, it's going to have some implication. So seasons too. Sometimes it's just not the right season, right person, wrong season. You know, I think that can be a piece too. So review the org chart, implications of a switch, consider pay structure, if hourly, schedule, and benefits offered at a new role. So, you know, this is something as you move away from 1099, sometimes you're going to move them into an hourly position. You need to think about, are they used to working hourlies? Do I need to think about adding them into a schedule? Do I need to think about adding them to the scheduling software? Do I need to think about adding them to the way that they're clocking in and clocking out software? Are there things that there are implications in a switch up, but also in escalation? Sometimes, you know, are there some greater benefits to an escalation within our company? You know, and that doesn't always have to mean health benefits. You know, I mean, there can be other ancillary things that are benefits to being escalated within a company, and that's what sweetens the deal. So I don't think it always necessarily has to be a strong money tie. I think obviously money speaks, you know, like that shows value to people. That's our culture. Our culture is very built on an ascension plan monetarily, but I do think there are other perks and benefits, proximity, inviting them into special trips that you do only at a leadership team level, like giving them an opportunity for some sort of training budget, you know, like we talked about in their new role. I think all those things can be perks and benefits, but things you want to think through before you get somebody into the new position. Yes, Savannah.
Just another note on that line, that if you're moving someone from contractor to W-2 and you decide that instead of, if they're used to being hourly and you're moving them to salary, making sure you're both super clear on what expectations are involved with that salary. Because if someone's been hourly and you work them a lot of hours, so you move them to salary to try and save the company some money, that might also be a point of contention later, depending on if the amount of hours that you're expecting them to do, like, yeah, we made you salary, like we gave you a pay bump, so we're expecting you to, you know, work 65-hour weeks. If they're not fully clear on that, then that could also, you know, down the line become more of an issue.
I would say too, like being honest with yourself on, were they working more hours at an hourly rate, and moving them to salary is actually a pay decrease because they were banking on the overtime or they were banking on the extra hours. And once you control their hours with the salary move, like you actually just limited their growth. So even though you gave them a higher title, they're making less because they're not working as many hours. And so really having those honest conversations with people about expectations. Hey, what's your pay expectation? What's your need on your monthly nut? Like, what are you hoping to get? And that doesn't mean that you have to be dictated by it. You know what I mean? Like that you're going to give them exactly what they're asking for, but it's really important to know those things and push them to be honest in those things so they don't have resentment downstream. Savannah,
My husband is super honest on that, and his job keeps offering to move him to a different position as salaried, and he's like, guys, if you want me to do absolutely nothing, then move me into a salaried position, because if I know I'm getting paid and I'm not having to put in the hours, man, I'm gonna milk it. So it's great to have honest employees like that, but not everyone's going to be super honest about it like that. So
send out new job descriptions. So this is important. I think that it's very, very easy for us to just think, oh, they know what they're doing, especially if it's a lateral shift, maybe just from a 1099 to a W-2, but the role doesn't change a whole lot. I would encourage you, it's just good to have job descriptions. Like, it's just good for people to understand what you're expecting from them, and I think that job descriptions are something that can be really easy if you go through, like we had talked about earlier, of push them through a delegate, push them through a gap analyzer. And then you just pulled everything out of what they say they do, and then shift that into a delegate and elevate, and then really refine down what is it that you want them to be doing. And then really from there, you have all of your bases to create your job description, like literally cut and paste, like grab it, drop it in, add some niceties, talk about, your culture at the beginning, talk about some KPIs at the bottom, and you've got your job description. It doesn't have to be something that's the super overwhelming task. Like a couple iterations, gap analyzer takes like 15 or 20 minutes, maybe a half hour if you go over it with them at the end. Delegate elevates another 15 or 20 minutes, maybe a half hour. So we're talking about an hour total. And then building the job description, maybe another half hour, to put it all together. So we're talking about an hour and a half in your employee, and you could even ask them to help you put it together. Hey, will you do me a favor? We just went through the gap analyzer. We just did the delegate and elevate. Will you do your best? Here's the template we use. Will you drop your delegate and elevate stuff into a job description as best makes sense to you and push back over to me to review, and then we can hash that out together. So it doesn't always have to be the people at the top making decisions for everybody beneath them. Like, who's going to be most invested in their job description? The freaking person that's living the job description. So like, let them speak to it. And then it's like, what's the saying? Many hands make light work. Like, push it out to your people and have them bring back what they think their job description should be once you take them through the right funnel of how you've come up with the key pieces. And then even things I've seen, like, push back on them. What do you think your KPI should be? Your key performance indicator. I mean, like, what are something that you think that you should be rated on each time we meet? Like, let them help you develop that. And then when they bring back things, it can be fuel for the fire, right? I think a lot of times as leaders, we feel this pressure of, we need to make all the decisions. Why? Why would you need to make all the decisions? Like, let them help you make decisions. They're boots on the ground. They probably understand the role better than you do. You know what I mean? So like, let's come up with good KPIs instead of, sometimes when it comes from the top down, the KPI can be something where it's like, man, it's just not, that just doesn't really work for this role. That doesn't really make sense for this role. Kimberly, what'd you share? Tell me about the 4R.
So we actually pulled this from another company and just kind of made it our own. And I thought it was really beautiful. And we did, like, I got with my managers and we were like, okay, this is kind of what we're thinking about like the job description for those that you're managing. I sent you the wrong link. Sorry.
Oh, it's
Copy,
okay.
but
No, it's fine. I mean, if you want to sell, we can sell on this channel too.
I mean,
I just want an affiliate cut. I just want an affiliate cut. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that was good stuff too, but no, that's the actual doc. But yeah, it's role. The 4 R's stands for your role, your responsibilities, your results, and your requirements. And some of the requirements is like tech stuff, but a lot of it, like, we really weigh heavy on key attributes of that person's. So this is mine. I actually read it with my mom. I was like, Mama, you think I can do this? You think that's in here? Yeah, but this, I really love it because it kind of breaks down, like, this is what you're going to be doing. Here's your responsibilities. Here's the results we expect to see from your work. But my favorite part is those key attributes of that person. And then there's some agreements down at the bottom, but I really love, and that's something that our company has done very well, is hire from the heart and train the trade, hire from the heart and train the trade. And that really helps build good culture. So I just want to share that with you guys. And we totally stole that from somebody else.
I love it. We love R&D, which is just rob and duplicate. I think that sounds amazing. So do it. Thank you for sharing that. You're the best. So send out a new job description if there's a change in roles. Review current documents on hand, agreements, tax documents. I think that that's important to see. What do we have already on hand for this person? Did they sign an agreement last time? Whatever I'm pushing them to next, like, is going to trump that. So just getting clear on what was the agreement we have with them. What kind of tax documentation do we have on them? Obviously, we're asking for key pieces of information from them that are going to probably be changing over time. So just be thinking about what we already currently have, and then what do we need now to offset what we currently have. So that's probably going to mean you need a new employee agreement. It's if you're moving them from a professional services or a contractor agreement, then there probably needs to be a new one signed for an employee. There are probably going to be new, implications in there. Probably pay structure is going to change. Probably the way you're documenting time is going to change. Salary versus, fixed rate. There's some different pieces in that. So a new employee agreement is probably important. And then requesting the new tax documents and proof of ability to work. Are they able to work in your state, in your country? Like some of those things you don't get down to the nitty gritty when they're a contractor, but if you're going to make them a W-2, in the States, or, we've started picking up some Canadian clients. So that's why I say ability to work. It depends on the country you're in and the implications that your country requires, but are they able to work here as an actual hired employee versus a contractor? And then I would say probably the final stage is intro to the new manager or director for next steps in training. I think this is so key, like, especially if you're going to shift people around on the org chart, like, put them in connection with the person that's supposed to be mentoring them, who's going to do evaluations with them, who's going to be instructing them. And there probably should be some sort of knowledge sharing at that point, like, what needs to be shared with this person to make them successful in this new position? Are there new assets they need we're a G Suite based company, and a lot of the companies that we work with are as well. Are there pieces of the drive that need to be shared with them for this new position? Are there new Slack channels they need to be added to that maybe they weren't part of before? Just like, how can we make this onboarding such a healthy thing? Because if what we're talking about is ascending people within our culture, handoff is a lot of times the easiest way you can do either really screw it up or make it really good on, okay, so we did all the bureaucratic business work, right? We got your tax forms, we got you signed your agreement. Awesome. Hope you guys enjoy that. And then like they're left there to feel like, oh, so where do I go from here? Instead of, no, just a real easy of, hey, I brought you into this role and I'm going to hand you off to this person. And these are the expectations that you can hope to get from this person. And that's going to be a data exchange, a communication exchange, a consistency of meeting structure. This is how this department is framed up, and empowering our leaders to really help them understand the hierarchy of the department. That's a really simple one of, hey, who's in charge? Like, and who's my boss and who am I answering to? Because just because somebody's been around for longer doesn't necessarily mean they're higher in the company. And it's important for people to understand, especially if you have a multi-person department, like, who is the boss, and are there multiple bosses, or am I just answering to one? And how does that work? So are there any other things that you guys feel like maybe I left off here, or things you think should be included? And I would take it from any of you guys. I know you're all super smart people and have done things like this.
Yeah, I would say this last step is a really good point in which to drive home your company culture too. That was what we did really well at my previous job. Is we bring you in, we get through, yeah, sign this, sign that, here's this thing, here's your login for that. Okay, now let's spend today and a few hours tomorrow talking about who we are as a company. This is what we value. This is our mission statement. This is everything about us. This is how we started. This is everything about our culture. And this is what we want you to be a part of. This is how you join in our culture. This is how you're going to be carried on through your culture. Because that way, when you start them out with the culture building, then they grow with that as they ascend up your employee journey. But yeah, if you're just like, here's your logins, here's what we're going to pay you, go do a good job. They're like, okay, I'll go do a good job. But why am I doing a good job? Who am I doing a good job for? Like, take the opportunity to really drill in culture from the get-go. So you're not having to, 6 months down the road, you're like, oh shoot, we forgot to tell them like how the company even started.
Which is awesome, Kimberly. I think that's where your document really shows good. We developed this thing called the ethos, which is Collab's version. And for us, it's exactly what Ben was just teeing up. And that is, our vision, wild clients in every vertical, our mission, which is the vehicle to get us to our vision, which is creating valuable solutions that exceed client expectations. And then the wow filter, like this should be how we're making our decisions. Every decision that's made within the Collab team is, does it honor the client and our commitment? Does it provide value to the client and to the Collab team? Is it something we can all be proud of? Like, let's ask ourselves as we're doing the work we're doing, does it match those? And if it doesn't, then it probably isn't something that should be included in Collab team. And then the guiding values for us is our internal compass, and the service promises is our external results. So once we're centered with our compass, it should have this implication on everything downstream. So Ben and I met yesterday, and I told him, hey, I really think it's important for us to really include these in all of our 5 moving forward. Let's just take a look real quick. Let's spend, a minute, 2 minutes at most, reviewing the ethos together and make sure it's embedded, and make sure that this is something that's important for us. This is always something that really resonates with people, is this part here with boundaries of commitments at work and at home are equally honored. We don't expect our people, to sacrifice their personal life for work. Like, that's something that's important here. And that's something I'll come back to team with all the time is, hey, just remember, customers' fires aren't our fires. Like, if they've gotten themselves into a firefight and they're trying to pull us in, like, their fires aren't our fires, so we don't work for them, we work with them. And so if we can come and help them, then absolutely. But that doesn't mean you miss your kid's baseball game because somebody else is going through a firefight. Like that, you have to make your own decisions. I don't expect you just to bow. Like, so let's make sure we show up well, but have good boundary. And so I think just going through something like this where you're really, really clear, and I think this takes some time, it's part of the VTO. So the VTO is part of the EOS system. I have ours pulled up, I think. But essentially just working through, what are your core values? What is your core focus? What is your 10-year target and your marketing strategy? What is the thing that makes you unique? Like, some of this stuff takes some time to develop, but I feel like in the long run, you're investing it in people, and people understand what your trajectory is and helps you to get there. So I think that sometimes visionaries can feel like, man, that just I don't see the monetary value in it necessarily, but the monetary value in it is retention. Like, we're going to retain the people we're hiring by getting them engaged in our culture. And when you write it out and you put it in front of them and give it to your managers as something to review consistently with their people, it keeps your culture strong, which is, it comes all the way back full circle to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier with, the guy from Kajabi and talking about hiring, expensive, like top guns out of other organizations. And if you're not careful, they bring their culture with them. And then you get a really mixed culture and you start losing your value systems instead of, no, let me tell you what our culture is, big gun. We appreciate your ability. We appreciate your willingness to come and join us in this organization, but this is what's important to us here. And if it's not what's important to you, no matter how much experience you have or expertise you've got, like, we need to know that you're going to line up. So I think that's a really key point. Does anybody have any thoughts to add to that?
Yeah, I had one for the last point in your Asana board. Something that's worked really well for us is creating a toolbox for, I created a toolbox for the jobs I was doing. It had all my links, all my sign-ins, like, it was just a toolbox for the job I was doing. And so when it came time, and this happens really quickly in our company in this season, when it came time to elevate someone else into that position, it was like, here's the keys to the toolbox, and like, we can walk through this, everything's organized in one place. And it wasn't like I had to go scratch all that up and hurry up and try to like remember everything before hiring or bringing someone else on. It was like, this has been here this whole time. Now you just have access to it. And then training your leaders to do the same thing. It's like, okay, this is your baby. You're responsible for keeping up your toolbox, adding things, keeping things updated. And sometimes like little stuff that you don't think about, like a subscription expiring, or, a card number that pays for the subscription needs to be updated or something. And it's just so easy when you have a toolbox and you've trained your team members to create toolboxes for themselves as a lead and also for their team. And it does save a ton of time having a toolbox where everyone can go to. And you'll hear us in Slack all the time, like, should I put this in the toolbox, or I just added that to the toolbox? And it's great to see everyone kind of collaborating together on that.
I like that.
It's a good idea. Another brilliant idea that our amazing Kimberly brought at our one-on-one this week. She was talking about iterations of an org chart, and I thought that was really smart, Kimberly, when you said it. And so I just wanted to acknowledge it here as well. Is as you're building out your org chart, I think that, man, have iterations. Like, hey, this is where we're at today, and this is where I'd like to see us a year from now, and this is maybe where I'd like to see us 3 years from now. Where it's like, even if you don't have names, EOS is really big on create the position, don't create it with a name. Like, build out the framework of what it is, and then ask yourself, is the person that's in that seat right now, is that the right butt in the right seat? Like, is that person there? And then it becomes a question of culture. Like, how well do they show up? How are they? Do they get us? Do they match our culture? So even if they don't necessarily fit in that seat on the bus, like, where can we shift them based upon what they're good at? And a lot of that comes out of delegate and elevate and conversations and 555s, where maybe, like Ben was saying, they just weren't cut to be that person yet, that manager yet. I always think of Zach. Like, good dude, like, such a big heart, such a lover, dude. The guy just was so good with his people and just loved them, but he just didn't have the skills to be a manager. It just didn't really work, And so how can we descend him in an honoring way, continue to invest in him, and then maybe consider something else downstream? Maybe it's an issue of he just didn't have the right training, or he didn't have the right time, or it was a bad time for him in his life, but does he still match our culture? So we can still find a seat for him somewhere on the bus. It's just probably not the seat that he's in right now. So don't get too attached to people in your org chart. Wireframe your org chart. And then I thought it was just a great idea from Kimberly. And then maybe create a couple iterations, like, what's next stage evolution in our company? If we grow, if we ascend to this level, and we're going to get, so a lot of that comes from the visionary. Steven's got this vision to hit this goal by the end of the year. Can our current team bear that goal if we were to hit it? And if not, where would we need to be able to bear that goal? So I think super smart, great ad by Kimberly, I thought.
Well, that was one of those heavenly downloads. I can't take credit for it, but also I would say remember, everyone's only got one butt. So be careful. Like, if you're looking at your org chart and you've got like one person in like 4 different seats, just remember, everyone's only got one butt to use. So in those iterations, like, trying to figure out how we can delegate and elevate people into like having one butt in one seat. And that way they can work in their genius and not be like, too much bread, not enough butter for their team.
Oh, that's good. Too much bread, not enough butter. Don't spread them. Don't spread
Everybody
them.
hates bread with too little butter.
Nobody likes that, Ben. Nobody likes that. So
especially cornbread.
Oh, cornbread, like you're from the South. Now you're talking a different language, sister. You're talking to Pacific Northwest here, or the Rockies. But I do love cornbread, especially with chili.